My father called me on a Tuesday evening, which should have been my first warning. He never called on weekdays. He said it was because he was always tired after work. But I think the real reason was that he preferred to keep his distance from me in whatever small ways he could manage. "Your brother is having dinner with Rebecca's family on Saturday," he said. "We want you to come." I was standing in my kitchen, still in my dress uniform, trying to decide between reheating leftovers and ordering Thai food. I set the phone between my shoulder and my ear and opened the refrigerator. "Okay," I said. "Text me the address." There was a pause. The kind of pause my father used when he was about to say something he knew he shouldn't have to say. "There's something else." I closed the refrigerator. "Her family is very established," he said. "Her father is on the federal bench. Her grandfather was a circuit court judge. Her mother sits on the board of 2 hospitals. They have a certain kind of," he stopped, started again. "They have a way of seeing things." "What does that mean, Dad?" "It means we'd prefer if you didn't mention what you do for a living." "Not right away." "Maybe not at all if it doesn't come up naturally." I stood very still in my kitchen. The refrigerator was still humming. Outside, a car went past on the street below my apartment. "You want me to hide that I'm a surgeon?" "Not hide. Just, don't lead with it. You're asking me not to mention that I'm a trauma surgeon. Rebecca's family is old money, sweetheart. They have a particular picture of what fits. Your brother is already nervous. We don't want to make it complicated." I didn't say anything for a long time. "Fine," I finally said. "I'll be there." I hung up and stood in my kitchen for a while longer. I thought about calling my brother Andrew, but I already knew what he would say. He would apologize without quite apologizing. He would explain it without quite defending it. He would tell me he just needed Saturday to go smoothly, that it was one dinner, that it wasn't personal. It was always one dinner, it was always not personal. I should tell you something about my family, so you understand why I went. My mother, Donna Hartwell, grew up working class in eastern Pennsylvania. She waitressed through community college and married my father, Robert Hartwell, when she was 22. My father sold commercial insurance for 30 years. They built something solid and real, and they were proud of it, and they wanted more for their children, and that wanting got complicated somewhere along the way. Andrew, my brother, was the easy one. He was charming and social and went to business school and now works in finance in Philadelphia. He is the kind of person people immediately like. He is also the kind of person who, when presented with an uncomfortable truth, finds a way to smooth it over until it no longer looks uncomfortable. He is very good at that. He has always been very good at that. I was the other kind. I was quiet in school, then serious in college, then consumed entirely by medical school. I matched into general surgery. I completed a fellowship in trauma surgery at a level I center in Chicago. I have been a trauma attending for 4 years. I work nights that last until morning. I have held people together with my hands in ways that are not poetic. They are just true. I am 38 years old and I am good at my job. My father had never said he was proud of me, not in those words, not even close. When I was in residency, he told a neighbor that I was in the medical field. When I became an attending, he told his brother I was some kind of hospital doctor. Last Thanksgiving, when my aunt asked what I did, he said I worked at a trauma center, and then immediately changed the subject to Andrew's new apartment. I had stopped expecting anything different, but I had not stopped showing up. That, I think, is the part of me I cannot fully explain. I kept showing up. The dinner was at a restaurant called Ashford and Clare in downtown Philadelphia. Not the kind of place you walk past and wonder about. The kind of place you have to know about. I wore a dark navy dress and low heels. I had considered wearing something more casual, a small rebellion, but I was too tired for symbolism. I just wanted to get through the evening. Andrew texted me when I was parking. "They're already inside. Booth in the back. Rebecca says her grandparents might join late. Just be normal." I read "just be normal" 3 times. I wasn't sure what he meant by it. I wasn't sure he knew. The restaurant was the kind of quiet that Oxos dark wood, low lighting, white tablecloths that were just slightly too crisp. I spotted my family in a corner booth before I spotted anyone else. My father, broad-shouldered and uncomfortable in a jacket that was a size too small. My mother, smiling the fixed smile she wore when she was working hard at something, and Andrew, hand already at Rebecca's back in a proprietary way that I recognized from every photograph he'd ever posted. Rebecca Alderman was beautiful in the way of someone who had grown up being told she was beautiful and had simply incorporated it. She had dark hair and easy posture and a smile that arrived the moment I sat down and did not waver. "You must be Megan," she said. "Andrew talks about you all the time." I smiled. "Good things, I hope, only good things." She meant it, I think. I don't think she knew anything about the phone call. Her parents were at the table already. Her father, Thomas Alderman, a federal district judge, silver-haired and precise the way certain men-in-law become precise, as if every word they choose has already been through a review process. Her mother, Catherine, was smaller and watchful in the way of someone who has spent decades sitting next to powerful people and learning more than they wanted her to. We ordered drinks. We talked about nothing in particular: the weather, a new restaurant that had opened nearby, how Andrew and Rebecca had met, which was a story I had heard twice already and listened to again. My father was careful not to look at me when the subject of careers came up. It came up about 15 minutes in. Judge Alderman asked Andrew about his work, and Andrew talked about it with the ease of someone whose work was always welcome in polite company. Then the judge turned to me. "And what do you do, Megan?" My mother's hand tightened around her water glass. I saw it from the corner of my eye. I looked at Judge Alderman. "I'm a trauma surgeon," I said. "I'm an attending at Jefferson University Hospital. I've been there about 4 years." The silence that followed lasted maybe 2 seconds. It felt longer. My father's expression did not change. That was how I knew I had done something he would bring up later, in the specific way he had of bringing things up. Not confrontationally, but with a kind of quiet disappointment that was worse than anger. But Judge Alderman's expression had changed. He had looked up from his menu. He was looking at me with something I couldn't read immediately, not the polite interest people perform when they're waiting for you to finish talking, but something more alert. "Jefferson's trauma program," he said slowly. "Level Eye Center. Yes. You're a trauma attending, that's right." He set his menu down. Fully down, flat on the table, like he was done with it. He looked at his wife, Catherine, and something passed between them that I didn't understand yet. "My son was brought to Jefferson 18 months ago," he said, "after an accident on 76th. He was in surgery for 6 hours. The table went quiet in a different way than before. "I don't know the names of the surgeons who worked on him," he said. "The family waiting room isn't a place where you learn names. But I know what they did. I know what it meant that he walked out of that hospital." He looked at me directly. "His name is Jonathan. He's 31. He's sitting at dinner with his wife right now, probably complaining about the Eagles, which is what he does every fall." I didn't know what to say. I said the thing that was true. "I'm glad he's okay. So am I," the judge said, "every single day." Catherine reached across the table and put her hand briefly over mine. It was the gesture of someone who had sat in a hospital waiting room and not slept and prayed and bargained and come out the other side. I recognized it. I had seen it many times from the other direction. My father hadn't moved. Rebecca's grandparents arrived at 8:30. Senator Alderman, retired, 2 terms, still carrying himself as though the title had been stitched into the fabric of his posture, and his wife, Eleanor, who had the easy warmth of someone who had spent 50 years being interesting in rooms where most people were only trying to seem so. Introductions were made. The table shifted to accommodate 2 more chairs. Wine was ordered. And then Eleanor Alderman looked at me with the direct attention of someone who had spent a lifetime taking stock of people quickly, and she said, "Thomas tells me you're in trauma surgery. Where did you train?" I told her. She nodded, asked which program director I'd trained under, and when I told her, she said, "He trained our family's internist. Good man, rigorous." She said it the way you'd say it about a piece of work that had been done well. "What draws someone to trauma?" she asked. "I'm always curious. It's not an easy specialty to choose." I thought about it for a moment. I didn't reach for the comfortable answer. "You don't always choose it," I said. "Sometimes it's the thing that fits the way your brain works. I do well under pressure. I like problems that need immediate solutions. In trauma, the decision window is short and the stakes are total. That suits me." She studied me for a moment. "It suits you," she repeated. "That's an honest answer. I try to be." She smiled. Small, genuine. My father was sitting very still. The dinner ended the way dinners do, with the slow dissolution of a shared table back into separate lives. Coats were retrieved, goodbyes extended. Rebecca hugged me at the door and said we should get coffee sometime, and I said yes because I meant it. In the parking garage, my father caught up with me before I reached my car. I heard him behind me and slowed down, but I didn't stop. I stood at my driver's side door and looked at him. He was not angry. That was the thing I had braced for that had not arrived. He looked tired and something else. Something I couldn't name right away and then, slowly, could. He looked like someone who had been shown something they weren't ready to see. "They liked you," he said. "They seemed like good people. Thomas kept asking about you after you went to the restroom. About the residency program. About what the hours are like." I didn't say anything. "He asked if you were happy," my father said. "In your work. What did you say?" He looked at the concrete floor of the parking garage. I said I didn't know, he said. I said I'd have to ask you. That sentence landed somewhere in me that I hadn't expected it to reach. I had built careful walls around those expectations, and this one small sentence went right through them. Not because it was enough, but because it was more than I had gotten before. I said. I'm happy in my work. He nodded. He didn't say anything else for a moment. I'm sorry, he said, about what I asked you not to say. Okay, I was wrong about. He stopped. Started again. I had a picture of how I thought they would react, and I was wrong. I was wrong about a lot of it. I stood with my keys in my hand. It wasn't just Saturday you were wrong about, I said. It was the gentlest way I knew to say it. I've been in this field for a long time, Dad. You've never come to see where I work. He looked up. I know, he said. You've never asked to. I know, he said again. I opened my car door. I'm operating on Thursday morning, I said. Early. But on Thursday afternoon I usually have a window before evening rounds, if you wanted to come see the department. See where I spend my time. He looked at me the way people look at things they've been keeping at a distance for so long that the distance has become the habit. I'd like that, he said. I believed him. Not fully, not immediately. Trust like that doesn't reconstruct in a parking garage after one dinner. But I believed that he meant it, which was somewhere to start from. Andrew called me the next morning. I was on my way into the hospital, coffee in one hand, badge in the other, doing the mental shift from regular person to attending that happens somewhere between the parking structure and the main entrance. Well, he said, that was not what I expected. No. Thomas Alderman asked me for your contact information this morning. He said, Rebecca's cousin is finishing his emergency medicine residency next year and wants to talk to someone about trauma fellowships. I stopped walking. Seriously, he said. Andrew paused, and I could hear him trying to figure out how to say the next part. He said they were glad you came. He said you were exactly the kind of person they hoped Rebecca was surrounding herself with. The morning felt different. Not because of that specifically, because of what it meant about the sum total of the evening, because of what it contradicted. Andrew, I said. Yeah, you knew what Dad asked me to do. A beat. Yeah, I did. You didn't stop it. No, I'm not. I started, then stopped. I need you to hear me when I say this isn't just about Saturday. This has been going on my whole career. Every event, every family thing. I'm always the version of myself he thinks won't fit. Andrew was quiet for a long time. You fit better than any of us, he said finally. That's always been the thing. You've always fit better, and he didn't know what to do with it. I stood outside the hospital entrance. The automatic doors opened and closed beside me as people moved in and out. We should talk about it, I said. Actually talk about it, not smooth it over. Yeah, he said. We should. Okay, Megan. He paused. You were incredible last night. I don't just mean how they responded to you. I mean, I watched you. You just were yourself. You didn't try to make anything easier or harder. You just were exactly what you are, and it was. He stopped. What? I don't know. It was what we should have all been doing the whole time. My father came on Thursday. He came at 2 in the afternoon, and I met him at the main entrance and walked him through the hospital the way I walk through it every day, past the information desk and the long corridor with the photographs of department heads and through the badge access doors into the clinical wing. I showed him where we receive trauma activations. I showed him the boards where we track cases. I showed him the quiet room where I sometimes sit for 5 minutes between a long procedure and whatever comes next, just to come back to myself. He didn't say much. He asked 1 or 2 questions about the equipment. He looked at everything carefully, the way he looks at things when he is taking them seriously. At the end, I took him to the attending lounge and made him a cup of bad hospital coffee, and we sat across from each other at a small table. How many surgeries have you done? He asked. In my career, hundreds. In trauma specifically, more than I count anymore. Do you remember them? The patients? Some of them, I said. The ones where something went very wrong and then right. The very young ones. The ones who had family in the waiting room who needed to understand what had just happened. I looked at my coffee. Not always the names, sometimes just a moment, a detail. He was quiet. There was a man, I said, about 2 years ago. Construction accident, internal bleeding, he came in very bad. We were in the OR for almost 4 hours. Afterward, his wife was in the hall, and she grabbed my hand, and she said she'd been praying for whoever was in that room with him. I looked up. I think about that sometimes, I said. Not because it was the hardest case or the most technically complicated, but because of what she said. That she didn't know who we were or what we were doing, but she was glad we existed. My father looked at me across the table. His eyes were bright and he blinked and he looked down at his coffee. I should have come sooner, he said. It wasn't an apology for one dinner or one phone call. It was bigger than that, and we both knew it, and neither of us said so directly, which is the way certain things get acknowledged in families. Not with the words that would be most precise, but with the weight behind the smaller ones. You came today, I said. He nodded. We sat there for a while, in the attending lounge with the bad hospital coffee and the hum of the building around us, and it wasn't fixed. None of it was fixed. But there was a window open that had been closed for a very long time. I've thought about that Thursday more than I've thought about the dinner. The dinner was the turning point, but the Thursday was the thing that mattered. That was when my father sat in the place where I live my actual life and let himself see it. Some doors open because someone forces them. Some open because the right combination of things happens at the right time, and someone is finally ready to look. My father was 63 years old, and he was finally ready to look. And I was 38 years old, and I was still there, which I suppose means something about me that I'm still working out. But I'm here. I kept showing up, and it turned out that was enough to build something from when the time finally came.